Yeah, you gonna put it on? Yeah, you gotta put it on. Yay! Okay, let's see. Scissors. Check. Steady hand. Check. Thread. Might have to improvise.
Mom. Mom.
Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to show you an example of what it looks like. As you can see here, oh, hold on. There's what we're making today. It is a necklace with binary code in the beads. And binary code is what pretty much everything in computer programming and logic-based programming, it's at the very basic levels of everything. And you can see it's a pretty nice brace or necklace, and you can see all the different beads there, and the nice charm there. So that's what we're going to be making. So what we're going to need is you need to choose what kind of charm you want, what kind of latch you want, and the color of the beads. And the important thing about the color of the beads is you need to have two different distinct colors. So you need to be able to make out the difference in the color. So what we're going to be using for our example here is going to be these nice silver beads, and these nice pink beads. And I don't actually have enough of the pink beads to complete a complete necklace, but we'll be able to at least give you an example. And you can use any parts that you choose. This is your project. I'm just showing you how to put the secret message into it. So as you can see there, there's one of the charms that I'm going to use. And this is the latch. So the hair didn't work, so we're going to use this this stretchy bead cord, and it does have some give to it so that it can be pulled on just a little bit, or can hold the weight a little bit better, and gives a little more leeway around your neck, or if you're doing it as a bracelet, this is a project that you can pretty much put any type of message you want into, and you can make it as long as you want. So you could do a whole bunch of this and just make like a rosary or something that has a Bible verse in it. Now, so what you're going to want to do is once you've decided the beads that you're going to use and the equipment that you're going to use, one thing to keep in mind when you're choosing your bead size is, we're just going to go ahead and put those into a cup. Let's see, there's 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. One thing to keep in mind is 8 beads is the letter of one character in your secret message. And that's just a common thing for binary code. So you need to figure out how long 8 beads is, and that's how you're going to determine how many characters you're going to do. Because if your message including spaces, you have to include any special characters, pretty much any button you would hit on the keypad to type it out on the computer is considered a character. So if you're doing spaces, you need to include that in your figuring too. So you take however long this ends up being when you put these side by side. And let's grab some cord here, and I'll put these on the cord. Okay, obviously we'll speed some of that up, but this in my configuration is one character. So when you're determining the length of how many characters you're going to have, you need to plan for however long this is times however many characters. So that's how long your necklace is going to be. So you might have to figure out ways to cut characters. Use emotions like the smiley faces with parentheses, using those type of characters. And so you might need to cut down, and also keep in mind that there's going to be what we call control beads at the beginning of each side of the bracelet or necklace, and they're each going to be 3 beads on either side. And the pattern of those is going to be pretty important for you to determine how to decode your secret message. So, I guess the next step is going to be to find my pin. Found it. Okay, so how you're going to determine what your secret message is. We're going to be using binary code. You can see that right there. And to determine how the code goes, we're going to use what they call and I wouldn't hold me to that. I'm going to look that up to make sure that's right. But you're going to look for this on Google and include it in the binary code. And usually it'll take you to a wiki site, and it's going to show you the 7 ones and zeros that are going to create a character. And it's a first group of 3, a second group of 4. And altogether, this is going to represent one character. So that's where we get the 8 beads. Now, I know you're thinking there's only 7 ones and zeros there. It's because these zeros and ones are considered what they call bits. are bits. And it takes 8 of these to make a byte. Right? And so to make things easy in the computer world is what they do is they put a leading 0 at the beginning of every printable character that's only 7 bits. So that makes it an even byte, or just 1 byte. That way it's a little bit easier because you're not having an odd number, and there is new characters out there that aren't part of the ABCs and stuff like that that the computers use, and they are 8 bytes. So in order to make things simple, they just added that leading 0. When you do your research to figure out what you're going to put in your code, you're going to see them as these 7-bit characters or 7-bit numbers. And for those of you that don't know, binary code is at the heart of any computer language, any computer logic, and it's just zeros and ones. Zeros are what they call low, ones are high, or you can also look at it as false and true, or off and on. So those are all ones and zeros. So now, once you've decided how many characters you're going to have, you times that by 8, and that's going to be how many beads you have, and you add on 6 beads for your control beads so that you can determine how to decode the message. Then from there, you need to take however many beads you have and divide it by half, because half is going to go on one side of your charm and the other half is going to go on the other side. So once you figure out how many characters you're going to do, don't forget it's 8 beads per character, and you got the 6 control beads. So the 6 control beads, there's 3 on each side. The first one right next to the latch that you're going to do, like this right here, and you've got one on each side, and then you're going to connect the, you're going to have your little tiny charm at the very bottom, and then each end's going to connect to a different part of the latch. So on the first side of the latch, you're going to put a 0 bead. So out of right here, I've got pink and silver. So what you're going to do is, if you want the pink beads to represent 0, they're going to be your first bead right after your latch. Okay? And then the second bead, based on your first bead, say we're going to do pink as the 0 beads and gray as the 1. So hopefully you can see that. So the first control bead is always going to be your 0. And then the next one, you can actually make multiple passes to lengthen your message, because say like right here, you end up having 10 characters, so you have 80 beads plus the 6 controls, so you have 86 beads. And then you end up, if you divide that in half, so you can put the emblem or your medallion or charm in the middle. You divide that in half. If you had 86, divide that by 43. So you have 43 beads on each side. Say you want 20 characters instead of the 10. So is what you can do is you can make another pass when you're decoding. So you go around the necklace. See, I've got a completed one here. And you start here, and you start to decode. but you're going to make a second round. So you start here again and say there's different sizes this time. You've got a small, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, that's pretty small. You've got a small pink and a small gray. So you see you got the small gray and then a small pink, and then you've got the large pink and the large gray. So in that second run, you'd be looking at the sizes. So this first bead, which is a 0, if you wanted the small beads to represent 0 on the second pass, you'd have a small bead, a small pink bead, if that makes sense. So we got small equals 0 and large equals 1. So if you're going to have 2 passes, is what needs to happen is on each side, so that when you're decoding this, you know that you're making a second pass. You've got your first bead on either side as a 0, and this is going to be, let's say, your little yin-yang sign down here. Wow, that's horrible. Then you've got all of the beads that go down, and then these connect. You know, you've got your connector here. And you've got, you like that drawing? That's pretty good, right? So the first bead on either side is going to be a 0. If it's only one pass, the next bead on both sides is going to be a 0 and a 0. So if you're only making one pass, so you're only worried about the colors, the sequence of colors. Now if you're going to make a second pass, both of the second beads are going to be a 1. Okay? So that means you're making a second pass. And not only are you going by the color, but you're going by the sides of the beads, which then you add in smaller beads and larger beads of the same colors that you're using. And so then there'd be the smaller beads, and we have here smaller beads and the larger beads. So if we're going to do a pink and a gray, but one of them, this one was a pink and a small, this was a gray and a large, and then the next one, you know, I think you get the gist of that there. So you can actually make a third pass, and that's where things get a little bit difficult. You can change sizes. Now, I don't have different sizes of beads, but is what you could do is you could have a square and then obviously we've already got the round beads. So the one thing you've got to think about, my roommates are giving me a hard time. So you can do the square and the circle beads, but then the reason this gets hard is because you've got to have gray squares and pink squares plus gray and pink beads, plus you've got to have large gray squares and small gray squares, and then you've got to have large gray or pink squares and small pink squares, and then you've got to have all the same thing for the beads, which we already have, which we have the large and the small. So you just kind of add on how many different types of beads. So it gets a little bit harder with each pass because you've got to find similar beads of a similar color. And then say that you want your large beads instead of the squares that are pink to represent zeros. So anything that's large is a 0, anything that's a bead is a 0, and anything that's pink is a 0. So these first beads would have to be a large bead that's pink instead of a large square that's pink. So you always know what your first 0 is. So if you do that, one of these sides needs to be 0 for your second bead, and one of them needs to be 1. That represents that they're different. Your second bead is different, so that means that it's a 3 pass. If they're both 1 or both 0s, that means you're just going through this. You're just decoding once through this whole cycle. If they're all both 1s, you're going through it twice. And the reason you're putting that in there, because I know some people are going to say, well, if you have multiple shapes, multiple sizes, and 2 different colors, wouldn't you know that it's 3 passes? Not necessarily, because you could do that type of stuff and just have one color, or just go by the color, the 2 different colors, and have multiple sizes and stuff just for decoration. So that's why that's there. Then the third bead, on the side that you're going to start your secret message, is going to be a 0. The side that ends your secret message is going to be a 1. Okay? So you know what the first 3 beads on either side mean. Now the reason they've got to be on either side, because if you go in 3 beads from the beginning, and say it's just a 1 pass, and they're all 0s, well, you know whatever this third bead is into your design, like on this one, this isn't done the exact same way because this was my first one, but you would know that if this is the same bead as your 0 bead, you know that this is the start, the side that you start on to start decoding your message. If in this case, see, the third bead is different than that first bead, you know that this is the end. So that's why we have that configuration on either side. So now you know how to do the control beads. You know how to select the different colors and what you're going to do there, and you know how to do 3 passes. Next you're going to do is you need to determine your message. So say, you know, you go through and you find it's a capital A, well, let's see, capital W, E space L O V E, all lowercase, love, and a capital Y O U. So just the capital and the Y is there, and then a capital T, and then YouTube. So this is, you got to remember, you got to count your spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we got 15. Now we have 15 characters here. That's going to be a little long for these large beads. So if I wanted to, I could get rid of the love and put like a, I don't know what the 2 characters you would use on keyboard to represent love, but you could probably shorten that down. But say we ended up keeping this because we were using smaller beads. The thing you got to keep in mind, we got 15 characters. So we can't divide 15 by 2. That, because if you do that, well, not evenly, obviously. So we'd have 7.5. So in that case, is what we're going to do is we're going to put the control beads and 7 characters plus the 8th character we're going to break in half. So 4 of the beads will be on the left side of the charm that you have, and the other 4 of that character will be on the right side, if that makes sense. If it was an even number, then we could put 7 characters on each side plus the 3 control beads on either side. So you go through that chart that you'd find on Wikipedia for the ASCII binary characters, and or binary code. It might be binary code. I'll make sure to put a link on the bottom. And then you're going to go ahead and just kind of start putting this out. I know for a fact that that's a 0. Okay, I don't know for an absolute fact, but, and don't forget, when you're looking this up to do your code that you're putting together, they're going to be in 7 bytes or bits. You're just going to go ahead and add a 0 in front of all these. So you can actually probably go through and just add that 0 so you don't forget. And capital letters and lower cases are going to be different too, so keep that in mind when you're looking that up on that table. So we have 8 characters here, and then we have 8 characters for each one of these, or not 8 characters, but each 8 bits, which each one of these letters is going to be a byte, just so you know. So technically, this 15 character sentence here is 15 bytes of information if you were to run it through a computer. So that's just kind of a cool little thing to think about. So what you end up getting is something like this. Now, I'm really not going to go into how to build the necklace, but as what I did is I just took, you take an end of the length of cord that you're going to use. Where did I put my cord? Oh well, we'll just use this as a way to show you what I did. First thing you're going to do is start the first end of this, and I apologize, I'm not very organized. So I just got these crimps right here. They're hard to see, they're really small, and they fit right over the end of here, and I put 2 of them on. So got 1, and there's much easier ways to do this. I'm sure you can look it up on YouTube as to how to do these, how to actually build a bracelet or a necklace. And then you take whichever side you're going to start, and go ahead and just wrap that around. You don't have to worry about this length as long as you have plenty of cord to work with. Then go ahead and take the other end, I don't know if you can see that, and put those back through these crimps or clamps or whatever you want to call them. Okay, and then kind of shorten this up a little bit so it's not too long. And then I take these little special pliers or tool that you can buy to do this specifically. You take and make sure everything's the way you want it. Do down that first one, and then kind of space it out a little bit, because the covers that go over these to make them look good do take up a little bit of space. So go ahead and do that. Then there's another thing on here. I don't know if you can see that, but it has 2 different sides. And this other one makes them into a nice little round circle. Of course, I did not do this very well, and it's not working out for me. But once you get these into kind of a good little circle here, and see, I got that one into a nice circle. Then there's another bead that goes over the top of this. That's just a cover, and I don't have many of these, so I'm not going to actually use this, but I don't know if you can see on my hand there. This just goes over this once you've got it into kind of a round bead there. It just goes over the top of that, and you clamp it shut so it makes it look nice. So once you've got that, then you can start putting the beads on there in the order that you've laid them out here, starting with the control bead for that end. And this can be the start or the end of your sequence of letters here. And I just make it the start, because that way you can just go down this line and start with your control beads for the start side, and then just kind of go through each letter and putting zeros, remembering what you had as a 0. And this does get complicated if you're making 3 passes, because not only do you got to think of this first bead has got to be a 0, which in the first pass is the size, based on the, or not the size, but the color. And then if your second pass, when you divide these up, say you have 30 characters and 10 characters on each pass, you've got to think that first character, the first digit is a 0, and then in that second pass, or the 20th character, that's a 1. So you'd need, say, the small ones are your 1s. So if that first character in the second pass is a 1, and the first character in the first pass is a 0, you've got to have a pink small bead as your first character after the control beads. And if you get into the 3, that's where you really get complicated. Because then you've got the first pass is a 0, which you're doing colors, so it's a pink bead. Second pass is, say, a 1, and you're doing size, and the small beads are your 1s. And then the third pass that you're making, the 30th character, not the 30th character, like the 29th, whatever. That third pass, the first character of that third pass, say it's a 1 as well, and your 1s are the squares. So you'd have to have a pink small square. So remember that when you're going through there. But then you just start going through with your first 3 control characters from the start. So that's going to be a 0, as I mentioned before. Then we're making, say, 3 passes. So from the third pass, you're going to make, well, they've got to be different on either side. So it's going to be a 0 on this side, and then at the end it'll be a 1. And then that next character is going to be a 0 because this is a start. So then you start going through your letters and going through the passes. And when you get done, this is only a 1-pass necklace, but this is what it looks like. And when you give it to someone, you can tell them that it's encoding a message, and just give them a description of how to decode it. Tell them about the first 3 characters, and then go through, and then each group of 8 beads from then on is another character. And you can go through, look it up online, and figure out what this is. Now there is another way to do it, but you really can't, well, I guess you could do it with the 3 passes and stuff. It's a little bit different, but if you look up Morse code, you can have 1 bead as a dot and 1 bead as a dash, and then have something that represents spaces. So you could do that as well. And hopefully I haven't gone too far into detail, and you're able to understand all that, because I don't always describe things very well. So that's how you make an encoded necklace. You can do the same with bracelets. You just got to have a start and stop point. So use some off the wall, like a medallion or a gem or something, or a charm, to represent your start and stop points. You can do rosaries. Just again, you got to have a start and stop point that's very clear for people so they know. Yay!